My name is Sarah Mitchell. 26 years. That's how long I served in the United States Navy. 26 years of deployments. 26 years of missed birthdays, missed Christmas mornings, missed anniversaries, missed funerals, missed ordinary Tuesdays, the kind of days most people never think about. I gave those years willingly because I loved my country and because I believed that sacrifice meant something. But standing alone outside the retirement ceremony auditorium that morning, staring at 3 empty front row seats reserved for my family, I started wondering if any of it had mattered, especially to them. The signs on the chairs were impossible to miss. Dad, Mom, Emily, my younger sister, the favorite, always the favorite. The seats sat empty while hundreds of sailors, officers, friends, and military families filled the room around them. I checked my phone again. Nothing. No text, no call, no explanation. Just silence. The ceremony was scheduled to start in 15 minutes. I told myself traffic was bad. Maybe they got delayed. Maybe something happened. Maybe. Deep down, I already knew, because this wasn't the first time. Not even close. Growing up, Emily was always the center of the universe. If Emily wanted attention, she got attention. If Emily wanted support, she got support. If Emily made mistakes, everyone rushed to protect her. Meanwhile, I was expected to figure things out myself. Dad called it independence. Funny how independence only applied to one child. When I enlisted at 18, my parents weren't exactly thrilled. Dad looked at me like I had announced I was joining the circus. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "You're smart enough for college." "I can do both." He shook his head. "You'll regret it." Turns out I didn't. But he spent the next 26 years acting like my military career was some temporary phase, a hobby, something less important than whatever Emily happened to be doing that week. And Emily seemed to always need something. Money, support, attention, second chances, third chances, 10th chances. My parents gave them all. Meanwhile, I built a career. Rose through the ranks, managed operations worth millions of dollars, protected people I'd never even meet. Yet somehow I was still the forgotten child. 3 months before retirement, I personally invited my parents. Not with a text, not with an email. I drove 6 hours to their house, sat at their kitchen table, handed them official invitations. My mother actually teared up. We wouldn't miss it for the world. Dad nodded. We'll be there. Emily happened to be visiting. She barely looked up from her phone. When is it? I told her. She frowned. Oh. That was it. Just, oh. At the time, I didn't think much about it. Big mistake. 2 weeks later, Emily announced her wedding date. Guess which day she picked? The exact same day as my retirement ceremony. Same date, same time, different city, 300 miles apart. When Mom called to tell me, she sounded nervous. "Honey, don't be upset." The second someone says, "Don't be upset," you're about to get upset. What happened? Emily booked her wedding. I felt my stomach tighten. What date? Silence. Then she told me. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. "You're kidding." "Sarah." "No, tell me you're kidding." Mom sighed. "The venue was available." "The only date available?" "I don't know." I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course this was happening. Dad got on the phone. "Look, retirement ceremonies happen every day." My jaw tightened. What? Weddings are once-in-a-lifetime events. For a moment, I couldn't speak, because he genuinely believed that. 26 years, and he reduced it to just another ceremony. I finally said, "You already promised you'd attend." Dad hesitated. Then came the answer that told me exactly where I stood. Emily needs us. Needs us. Those two words followed me for months. Needs us. Like I didn't. Like I never did. The weeks passed. I stopped arguing, stopped asking, stopped hoping. Because experience had taught me something. You can't compete with the favorite child, no matter how hard you try. So I focused on retirement preparations. I planned everything carefully, invited former commanders, friends, mentors, sailors I'd served alongside, people who had become family. Because sometimes the family you choose shows up when the family you're born into doesn't. The night before the ceremony, I received a group text. A photo. Emily wearing her wedding dress. Mom wrote, "Can't wait for tomorrow." No mention of my retirement. No acknowledgement whatsoever. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put my phone down and finally accepted reality. They weren't coming. The next morning confirmed it. No calls, no texts, no apologies, nothing. Just 3 empty chairs. 15 minutes before the ceremony began, my best friend Karen sat beside me. She'd served with me for nearly 20 years. She looked at the empty seats, then looked at me. They really did it. I nodded. Karen muttered something that would make a sailor blush, then squeezed my shoulder. Their loss. I smiled weakly. Maybe, but it still hurt. Because no matter how old you get, part of you still wants your parents to be proud. The auditorium began filling faster. Senior officers arrived, families gathered, children waved tiny American flags. Everyone seemed happy, excited, proud, and I felt completely alone. Then my commanding officer approached, Captain Reynolds, a tough man who rarely showed emotion. He noticed the empty seats immediately. Family running late? I considered lying. Instead, I told the truth. They chose my sister's wedding. His expression hardened instantly. Seriously? I nodded. For a second, I thought he might say something diplomatic, professional. Instead, he quietly said, "The hell with that." That made me laugh, for the first time all morning. The ceremony began. The national anthem played. Everyone stood. I stood too, trying to focus, trying not to think about the wedding happening several hours away, trying not to imagine my parents smiling in family photos while my seat reservations remained empty. One speaker followed another. Stories, achievements, deployments, awards, service history. Each word felt surreal because they were describing my life, a life my parents never seemed interested in understanding. Then Captain Reynolds stepped to the podium, and something changed. His prepared speech disappeared. Instead, he looked directly at me, then at the audience, and said, "Before we continue, there's something everyone here should know about Commander Sarah Mitchell." The room grew quiet, very quiet. Even I felt confused. This wasn't part of the schedule. Then he smiled and said words that would change everything. "There's a special guest joining us today." The audience looked around. So did I. The doors at the back of the auditorium opened, and every sailor in the room suddenly snapped to attention. Because the person walking inside wasn't just another officer. It was someone nobody expected, including me. And the moment I recognized him, my heart nearly stopped. The moment the doors opened, every sailor in the room stood straighter. Conversations died instantly. The atmosphere changed, not because someone important had arrived, because someone extraordinary had. Admiral James Holloway, a 4-star admiral, one of the most respected leaders in the United States Navy, someone who rarely attended retirement ceremonies, especially not personally. My heart pounded because I had absolutely no idea why he was there. The admiral walked calmly through the aisle. People moved aside immediately. Every eye in the room followed him. Then he stopped, right beside me, and smiled. "Commander Mitchell." I stood frozen. "Sir?" He extended his hand. "Good to see you again." "Again?" The audience looked confused. Most had never seen me react that way. Truth was, most people didn't know the full story. Neither did my family. Especially my family. The Admiral stepped onto the stage. The room remained silent. Captain Reynolds looked like a man trying not to grin, because apparently everyone knew except me. The Admiral adjusted the microphone, then looked directly at the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he paused. "I wasn't scheduled to be here today." That got everyone's attention. "I rearranged my schedule because Commander Sarah Mitchell earned it." I swallowed hard. The room became even quieter. Then he said something that shocked everyone, including me. 20 years ago, during a classified operation in the Persian Gulf, Commander Mitchell made a decision that saved the lives of 32 sailors. A murmur spread through the audience. My stomach tightened. I hated attention. Always had. The Admiral continued. "She never spoke publicly about it, never asked for recognition, never used it for promotion, never used it for personal gain." He looked directly at me. "But today, I will." The audience erupted into applause. I lowered my head, embarrassed, overwhelmed, emotional, because I hadn't expected any of this. Then the Admiral revealed something else, something I hadn't known myself. The Navy recently approved a distinguished service recognition that will permanently honor Commander Mitchell's contributions. The room went silent. Even I looked confused. Permanently? What did that mean? Then he smiled and dropped the bombshell. "Beginning next month, the Naval Leadership Development Center's primary training hall will bear her name." The room exploded. People jumped to their feet. Applause thundered through the auditorium. Several sailors whistled. Others shouted. Karen was crying. Captain Reynolds was smiling like a proud father. And I just sat there, speechless, because I had never expected that. Ever. Not in a million years. The standing ovation lasted nearly 2 minutes. Meanwhile, 3 chairs remained empty. Mom, Dad, Emily. The people who should have been there. The people who never showed up. The people who had no idea what they were missing. The ceremony continued. Awards were presented, stories were shared, photos were taken. But the biggest surprise came afterward. The Admiral approached me privately. "Commander." "Sir?" "How far away is the wedding?" I blinked. "What?" "Your sister's wedding." I stared. Apparently, Captain Reynolds had told him everything. The Admiral sighed, then shook his head. "Unbelievable." I laughed. "That's one word for it." He looked thoughtful, then checked his watch. "What time is the reception?" I frowned. "About an hour." The Admiral nodded. "Good." Something about that answer felt dangerous. Very dangerous. "Sir?" He smiled. The kind of smile that usually meant trouble for somebody. "Let's go congratulate the family." Meanwhile, 300 miles away, Emily's wedding reception was in full swing. The ballroom was packed, champagne flowed, music played, guests laughed. My parents sat at the head table, taking photos, giving speeches, pretending everything was perfect. According to several relatives who later told me the story, my name came up more than once. Not in a good way. One aunt reportedly asked where I was. Emily laughed. "Oh, Sarah had some retirement thing." Some retirement thing. 26 years, reduced to 4 words. Dad apparently shrugged. The military makes a big deal out of everything. Several people laughed. Mom didn't stop them. She just smiled politely, as if agreeing. As if my entire career was some minor inconvenience. Then everything changed. The ballroom doors opened, and a Navy officer stepped inside. Then another. Then another. Conversations slowed. People turned, confused, because military officers don't usually appear at wedding receptions uninvited. Then Admiral Holloway entered. The room froze, completely. Every conversation died instantly. Nobody understood what was happening. The Admiral walked calmly toward the head table. Dad stood, confused. Emily looked irritated, like someone had interrupted her spotlight, which technically someone had. The Admiral stopped directly in front of them. "Good evening." Nobody answered, because they were too stunned. Finally, Dad managed, "Can I help you?" The Admiral smiled. "I'm looking for Commander Sarah Mitchell's family." The entire room went silent. Dead silent. Dad slowly raised his hand. "I'm her father." The Admiral stared at him for several seconds, then nodded. "I see." The disappointment in those 2 words was impossible to miss. Guests exchanged nervous glances. Emily forced a smile. Sarah couldn't make it? The Admiral actually laughed. Not kindly, not politely. The kind of laugh people make when they hear something ridiculous. "Couldn't make it?" He shook his head. "No." The room became uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Then he continued. "Commander Mitchell is currently being honored by the United States Navy." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The Admiral's voice remained calm. "But I was curious." His eyes landed on Dad. "What event was important enough to make her family miss the most significant day of her military career?" Dad's face turned red. Emily looked furious. Guests watched like statues. The Admiral continued. 26 years. 3 deployments. Hundreds of sailors mentored. Lives saved. Leadership recognized across the Navy. Then he asked the question nobody could answer. "And none of that was worth attending?" Silence. Absolute silence. Emily finally snapped. "It was my wedding." The Admiral turned toward her. "And?" The room practically stopped breathing. Emily looked shocked, probably because nobody had ever challenged her before. The Admiral continued. "Your sister spent 26 years serving this country. You couldn't choose another date?" No answer, because there wasn't one. Then he delivered the knockout punch. "Today, the Navy named a leadership center after her." Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Several guests nearly dropped their drinks. Mom's mouth fell open. Dad looked stunned. Emily blinked repeatedly. "What?" The Admiral nodded. "You heard me correctly." The room exploded with whispers. People stared at my parents, then at Emily, then back again. Suddenly, everyone understood. They hadn't skipped an ordinary ceremony. They had skipped history. The Admiral stepped back, then said the sentence nobody forgot. "Some families spend a lifetime hoping for a daughter like Sarah Mitchell." He looked directly at my parents. "You were lucky enough to have one." The silence afterwards felt endless. Then he turned and walked away, leaving destruction behind him. The fallout was immediate. Relatives started asking questions. Lots of questions. Guests began leaving the head table. People who had laughed earlier weren't laughing anymore. My parents suddenly found themselves explaining, defending, justifying, and every explanation sounded worse than the last. By the time the reception ended, the happiest day of Emily's life had become something else entirely, a public lesson, one they never expected. 3 days later, my phone rang. Mom. I stared at the screen, then answered. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, "We didn't know." I laughed softly, not because it was funny, because it didn't matter. "Mom, you never asked." Silence. Painful silence. Then she started crying. Real crying. The kind that comes from regret, not embarrassment. Regret. Dad called later. For the first time in my life, I heard uncertainty in his voice. "I'm sorry." I nearly dropped the phone. My father never apologized. Ever. But this time, he did. Because this time, there was no excuse, no explanation, no way to pretend they hadn't made their choice. They had. And everyone saw it, including them. 6 months later, I attended the dedication ceremony. The newly renamed Leadership Center stood proudly overlooking the harbor. A bronze plaque displayed my name, something I still struggled to believe. Hundreds attended. Sailors, veterans, officers, families, friends. And this time, 3 familiar faces sat in the front row. Mom, Dad, Emily. They arrived 2 hours early. Dad saved seats himself. Mom cried through half the ceremony. Emily remained unusually quiet. Life has a funny way of teaching lessons, sometimes gently, sometimes brutally. When the ceremony ended, Dad hugged me, longer than he ever had before. Then he said something I'd waited 30 years to hear. "I'm proud of you." 4 simple words. 4 words I once thought I'd never hear. And strangely, that felt better than revenge, better than public embarrassment, better than watching them squirm. Because at the end of the day, recognition from strangers is nice. Recognition from your country is an honor. But recognition from the people you love, that's the thing most of us spend our whole lives chasing. As we walked away from the harbor that afternoon, I looked back at the building carrying my name, then at my family, finally together, finally paying attention. And for the first time in a very long time, the empty seats were gone. The end.